Do you love casting Dragon's Approach, but hate getting tangled up with all those pesky dragons? Do you yearn to befuddle your opponents with a strategy so silly they'll think you rode in on a short bus? Presenting Dragon's Anxiety, the hot new deck from the makers of Batman that will have your opponents worried for all the wrong reasons. Now you can have all the fun of Dragon's Approach without clogging your deck with any of those leathery layabouts. Watch your opponents come to the horrific realization you weren't digging for dragons in the first place. Order now for only 50 easy payments of $19.99. Actual price, playgroup not included. Dragon's Approach is a 3-mana sorcery that deals 3 damage to each opponent, and you can have as many as you want in your deck. You can also exile 5 of these bad boys to put a dragon from your deck onto the battlefield, but this effect has an inherent problem. Dragons are a notoriously bad tribe. I would never put one of these filthy sky geckos in my deck. Just ask yourself, is a 10/10 flyer that draws cards and plays permanents for free better than a 3-mana lightning bolt? Of course not. Don't be ridiculous. I scoff at the mere idea. In fact, I'd go so far as to say the only thing better than casting 1 Dragon's Approach would be casting 2 copies of Dragon's Approach. Unless, of course, you could cast 3. No, wait, 5. Could you imagine casting 28 copies of Dragon's Approach on a single stack, dealing 84 damage to each opponent? If only Wizards of the Coast would print some hyper-specific card that could cast every copy of Dragon's Approach in the deck so we didn't have to think or strategize. Oh wait, they did? In Cold Snap? Way back in 2006? Thrumming Stone is a 5-mana legendary artifact that gives spells you cast Ripple 4. What the hell is Ripple 4, you may ask? Whenever you cast a spell, you may look at the top 4 cards of your library, and if any of those cards have the same name, you can cast them for free. And since every spell we cast has Ripple 4, so do the free copies we get from Ripple. So if we have a Thrumming Stone on the board and cast Dragon's Approach for 3 mana, we look at the top 4 cards of our library, and if we find any copies of Dragon's Approach, we can cast those for free. And since they also have Ripple, we do it again for each copy we cast. Over and over until we don't reveal any more copies of Dragon's Approach. Given that we run 28 copies, we have a roughly 61% chance of comboing lethal damage off a single cast from hand, and a roughly 86% chance when casting 2 from hand. It's all up to RNGs if we win, but what red player can resist a good gamble? Without dragons, we have no other win condition, so this deck is full throttle, high power, no holds barred. We support our combo with reckless abandon. We have the fastest mana, and effective protection, and artifact recursion, and oppressive stacks.
And my axe.
And motherfucking dwarves! Rockin' stone boys, these bearded beauties are carrying us to Combo Town. We're tunneling for treasure, and Magda is directing the digging from Dragonback. That's right, this dwarf rides a dragon. Just look at this idiot. He's just happy to be in the presence of such greatness. Magda gives us a treasure token whenever a dwarf becomes tapped, and can sacrifice 5 treasures to put any artifact from our library into play at instant speed. You heard that right. Put into play. Our Thrumming Stone can't get counterspelled if we never actually cast it in the first place. Friendship ended with the Ur-Dragon. Magda Brazen Outlaw is my new best friend. And I'm going to let you in on a little rules lawyer secret here. The Ripple 4 Thrumming Stone gives our cards enters the stack as a separate triggered ability, meaning if we cast Dragon's Approach, a normal counterspell will only be able to stop the 3 damage. The Ripple ability still goes off, and we still get to combo lethal damage from approaching dragons. Well, most of the time. Force of Will players in shambles. Since we're playing high power, everyone obeys official Mulligan rules. But we have 28 copies of a card we don't really need in our starting hand, and 1 card we actively don't want. So we can dig deeper and run less of those unsavory land cards than all of our opponents. Dwarfless heathens. This is my least expensive deck, clocking in at just under $1,000, which is great because after some of my other builds, my kids are fresh out of kidneys. Before we delve into the deck list, I posted a link down in the comments if you want to play it yourself. And remember to like and subscribe while you're down there. I spent a lot of time at the Forge crafting this one. To start, we run 9 1-drop dwarves. Dwarven Trader and Dwarf on a Technicality are our vanilla creatures. Enslaved Dwarf and Liberated Dwarf might as well be vanilla because we have no valid targets for their abilities. Dwarven Armorer gives us some incredible value. By simply waiting a turn after we play this Hasteless Dwarf, we can pay 1 red and tap him to discard a card and give a creature half of a 1/1 counter. A couple of our other 1-drop effect dwarves have some occasionally useful abilities. Dwarven Grunt has Mountain Walk. Spark Mage deals 1 damage to a creature that didn't block him in the first place. Other abilities are virtually useless, like Dwarven Scorcher, who kills himself to ping a player for 2, or Bloodline Dwarf, who sacrifices himself to kill all of our other dwarves for no good reason. We've got 6 dwarves that are worth paying more than 1 mana for. Vault Robber taps to exile a creature from your graveyard and generate a treasure. Fearless Liberator can create a dwarf for 3 mana if he attacked that turn. Dwarven Blast and regular miners can pay 3 and tap to destroy a non-basic land, like Glacial Chasm, which shuts down our combo. Axeguard Cavalry taps to give another dwarf haste, and the only dwarf we're willing to pay 3 mana for, besides Magda, is Plundering Barbarian. He can remove a problem artifact, like Cursed Totem, or generate a treasure when he enters. The Gimli clip earlier was just a bit. I would never pay 3 mana for this fruitcake when I could spend that mana to cast another copy of Dragon's Approach. Since we only get 1 copy of Thrumming Stone, and it's our only win condition, we'll need the best protection available to us to keep it online. Conqueror's Flail and Defense Grid stop our opponents from casting during our turn. And Slowbad and Welding Jar protect Thrumming Stone from destruction. Sometimes protection isn't enough, and mistakes do happen, so we have some recursion in case things go awry. Goblin Engineer and Goblin Welder can get Thrumming Stone back from the graveyard by sacrificing an artifact. Trading Post does the same thing by sacrificing a creature, but it's an artifact so you can search it with Magda in a pinch. We already have our opponents confused and anxious, so why not angry as well? For stacks, we run Blood Moon to turn all non-basic lands into mountains, and Tangle Wire to force players into tapping permanents. Not only does this cripple our opponents, but we also get to tap our dwarves to generate treasures without attacking. For some reason, our opponents think they're entitled to run stacks as well. So for removal, we run Wild Magic Surge that can destroy a permanent for 2 red. Brinding Volley kills Drannith Magistrate and can't be countered, while also having a Dying Dragon in the art for maximum themitude. And we run 3 counterspells in Pyroblast, Tybalt's Trickery, and Deflecting Swat. Ideally, we'd only run Dwarves and Dragon's Approach, but some cards are just too valuable to leave out. Zorn doubles our treasure generation. Dockside Extortionist has an Enter the Battlefield effect that's vaguely useful. Final Fortune gives us 1 extra turn to gamble before the Dimir player hits us with a Thoracle combo. Sticky Fingers gives a Dwarf Menace an extra treasure when it does damage, and a draw when it dies. Prophetic Ravings gives a dwarf haste and lets us tap it to discard 1 and draw 1. And of course, we run that card from when Jessica became a red staple through willpower alone. For mana rocks, we have Mana Crypt and Soul Ring, Mox Amber, Mox Opal, and Chrome Mox, and Springleaf Drum, which both generates a mana and taps a dwarf in 1 fell swoop. For disposable mana, we have Samian Spirit Guide, Lotus Petal, and Black Lotus at home. We'd run real Black Lotus, but unfortunately he got locked up back in the 90s. We run a staggering 26 land to fuel this combo machine. Mutavault is both a land and a dwarf that taps for colorless. Treasure Vault can sacrifice itself to make treasures so we can McDuck it up before we lose all of our gold to our crippling gambling addiction. We run Shinka the Bloodsoaked Keep to give Magda first strike. It can't target any other dwarf, but we're not letting our queen die like the Brits did. Cavern of Souls makes our dwarves uncounterable. We run Urza's Saga and Ancient Tomb, like in virtually every other deck. Gemstone Caverns is incredible in this deck because we mulligan hard and almost always have an extra copy of Dragon's Approach to exile. I run Shatter Skull Smashing so I can pretend I'll ever use it for anything other than an untapped land. Inventor's Fair can sacrifice itself to search for an artifact. The Great Furnace is an artifact. Holdout Settlement and Survivor's Encampment both let us tap a dwarf without attacking. Of course, we run all 5 fetch lands because every basic we pull from the deck is 1 more chance at finding a copy of Dragon's Approach. And 7 mountains to finish things off. Until next time, I'm Madcap Mortimer, and this has been your ultimate guide to
Lightning bolt! Lightning bolt! Lightning bolt! Lightning bolt!
like and subscribe to show all of those dwarfless heathens what for, and tell me your thoughts on the deck down in the comments. I put a link to the deck list down there if you want to perplex your playgroup, and check out my Gideon video for another absurd Commander deck list. Thanks for watching, and may the heart of the cards be with you.